In this video, I'm going to take a look at Alice Perkins and the way she is answering, or not as the case may be, questions put to her.
Could result in massive damages being awarded against the post office. That must have reached board level.
Yes, it did reach board level.
Yes. And so from the point of view of trying to assess risk and whether or not it could have a material impact on, to use the archaicism, the group as a whole, or post-2012, the separated post office, that would be something where the board would obviously work in close conjunction with the executive team and also general counsel.
Yes.
Yes.
So Alice Perkins is just answering yes in response to Edward Henry's questions. But did you notice that Joe Hamilton just kept a steely gaze towards Perkins and never looked away from her? It didn't seem to bother Perkins, but let's see how she gets on under further questioning.
Conclusion of the backward-looking report, which is the Altman General Review of October 2013, is that, quotation, review of the cases that had been prosecuted over the last few years is fundamentally sound, and that no, quotation, systemic or fundamental flaws in the review process were detected. In addition, a number of relatively small procedural recommendations were made regarding matters such as document retention, etc. Now, document retention is a euphemism for shredding, the unlawful, the unauthorized destruction of documents that ought to be preserved under the Criminal Procedure and Investigations Act.
Edward Henry reads out paragraph 23 of this document to Perkins, and he describes the paragraph as a euphemism for shredding documents. Perkins says she never used words like that. But what did the words in that paragraph actually mean then? Is she trying to distance herself from what has been described? Is she trying to put it to the inquiry that she is a good, all-round gal? Let's listen in to see what else she says to questions asked.
I don't think I've used those words. I don't remember using words in relation to this sentence.
Well, you're saying that it was kept back from you. Paragraph 298, you've just read the paragraph.
Well, I think if you look at that last sentence, I mean, obviously it depends who you are, and it depends what else you already know. But to me, that reads like a kind of bland sentence. It could mean anything. To me, that does not mean shredding of documents relating to either past or current actions in relation to prosecutions. I'm really sorry, but I simply cannot make, that's not a connection that I think you would reasonably expect somebody.
Perkins is answering the question with an air of indifference, and almost as if she thinks she doesn't have to answer. She seems to be displaying a touch of arrogance about her in the way she is looking at Edward Henry whilst answering, and it seems that she would rather be anywhere than at the inquiry. But let's listen on to what she says, as things seem to be getting on her nerves a touch, and becomes even more frustrated with the questions.
Coming to this
That is not, and you're a very intelligent woman, that is not the thrust of my question at all. I'm not suggesting that you ought to have read that as shredding. What I am suggesting, however, and I will put it to you straight, is that this must have been curated between you, the chief executive, and general counsel, that a sanitized version of the truth was perpetuated in board documents as opposed to the unvarnished truth.
That is absolutely untrue, and I find that question offensive.
Edward Henry puts a question to Perkins which he describes as a sanitized version of the truth, and Perkins immediately goes on the offensive, saying she is offended by the question. That begs the question as to what level of offense the sub-postmasters were subjected to whilst they were being called liars and getting locked up. I don't think she is in any position to say she is offended by the question and demonstrates an air of pompousness about her that is quite distasteful.
I'm very sorry if you find it offensive, but the fact is, you have said that things were surprising, extraordinary, disappointing, astonishing. A whole range of epithets have dropped from your lips to apparently excuse the board's stupefying ignorance on matters of central importance. And I'm suggesting to you that that cannot be right, that you must have known.
You can suggest that to me as often as you would like, in as many different words as you would choose. It is absolutely, categorically untrue, and I am on oath, and I am a truthful person.
Perkins says she is a truthful person, but I wonder how many postmasters said the same thing whilst being thrown in prison by the senior types in the post office. And she gets worse, as we'll see.
I think since we've now established, and we have clearly established, that it came to me and my fellow board members, I think I would have read it.
So that I'm clear, what you're acknowledging reading is the briefing report,
Yes.
not the full document.
Sorry,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
And actually, could I just say something about that?
Yeah.
Because had I seen the full, and I don't know whether anybody here has, well, I'm sure lots of people have seen it. The full report, when I looked at it again earlier this year, has one of those colour ratings, red, amber and green, against the different items. And if you just take one look at that report, you can see that there's an awful lot of red and an awful lot of amber in there. And if I had seen that, even if I hadn't read a word of the text, it would have jumped out at me.
Did you notice the shift in tone by Perkins in that segment? She is on her high horse whilst talking to Edward Henry and trying to sound as if he is beneath her contempt. Yet when Sir Wyn Wlliams asks her a question, she is all Miss Nice and being humble when talking to Sir Wyn. I think this change in tone and attitude says something about her.
From Paul Venels to Alistair Marnock, he was, of course, dealing with insurance, wasn't he?
Alistair Marnock was the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee.
Absolutely, but he was also dealing with the notification issue to the insurers, together with Chris Day.
In his, yes, he was, yeah.
Yes, copied to you, obviously to the company secretary as well. And then could we scroll up, please? And then this.
Edward Henry reads Perkins a passage from an email that she was copied into, and she starts to stumble over her words and struggles somewhat to answer the question.
Most of the note, so this did come to you, should be self-explanatory, although I should explain the rationale behind our proposed timings. As we discussed last week, there is a choice between proceeding with the review in the near future, while the experiences are still relatively fresh in our memory, or waiting until early 2014 when we expect Second Sight will no longer be involved in the process. Having de-risked the review by narrowing its scope and running it as a short internal exercise, on balance, I think it is more important to capture our insights sooner rather than later. We are therefore proposing to commence the process in October, not earlier, because it would be more appropriate for both sides to wait until Susan is no longer working in the building.
Edward Henry reads Perkins a passage from an email that she was copied into, and she starts to stumble over her words and struggles somewhat to answer the question.
I don't remember this, the reasoning behind the change in the scope of the lessons learned review, and I have wondered about that in recent weeks myself. I think the key point about Susan was that she had been, this is a lessons learned review about the way in which Second Sight had been appointed to run this review. It was about things such as the absence of an engagement letter, things that we've talked about to do with the timetable, the costs, the lack of proper liaison with them.
And there we have it, an insight into Alice Perkins' demeanor and her attitude shifts depending on who she is talking to at the time. She says she takes offense at the way she is questioned. Well, maybe she should be a little less awkward, as the more she behaves like this, the more likely she could trip herself up if ever she is questioned by the police. The next deep dive video we will look into is the post office investigator known as Steve Wlliams. So watch out for that in the next few days, and thanks for watching, and please leave me a comment below.